Hello, my name is Rowena. My parents said I couldn't come to my sister's wedding in Madrid because I don't speak Spanish. But it wasn't about language. It never was. It was about control, about making sure I stayed quiet, unseen, unfelt, unwanted. My sister said I would embarrass her in front of her husband's family. So they erased me from photos, from credits, from the story I helped build. But the next morning I woke up to 23 missed calls. Now ask yourself, what could I have possibly done that made them panic overnight? It started like any other Tuesday morning in Goleta. The fog still hung over the hills, the kind that made the air smell faintly of salt and eucalyptus. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, scrolling through my inbox. It was the usual mix of freelance requests, newsletters I never unsubscribed from, and family group emails that I usually skimmed. That's when I saw it. Wedding coordination, final guest details, Madrid. I clicked without thinking, expecting some generic reminder or maybe a packing checklist. My sister Isolde loved order. She sent spreadsheets for everything. What to wear, who to tag in photos, even seating charts for rehearsal dinners. I scrolled down the list of attendees, smiling despite myself. Then I reached the end and stopped. My name wasn't there. I blinked, scrolled back up, checked again. Maybe I missed it. Rowena. Row. R. Havers. Nothing. I rubbed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. Maybe it was an oversight. Maybe she'd forgotten to copy me on the official list. It had to be that. My sister could be forgetful under pressure. I told myself that as I read the email again, slower this time, every line a small cut. Confirmed attendees, Mom, Dad, Aunt Claire, Uncle Jeff. I wasn't in the family section either. For a moment, my mind went blank, like my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. I closed the laptop, stood up, then sat right back down. I stared at the steam rising from my coffee, now cooling fast. Something inside me said, "Don't overthink it." Another voice, quieter, sharper, whispered, "You know exactly what this means." I pulled out my phone and texted Isolde. "Hey, I think the list might have missed my name. Just wanted to check?" No response. I waited an hour, trying to distract myself with a writing project, but the cursor blinked at me like it knew something I didn't. I made lunch, cleaned the counter, even folded laundry that didn't need folding. Still no reply. By late afternoon, I tried again. "Did you get my message? Should I talk to the planner directly?" This time she answered. It was only one message, short, cold, surgical. "You're not invited, Ro. You'd embarrass me. You don't speak Spanish and they won't understand you. Please don't make this about you." I read it once, then again, until the words blurred. I didn't cry right away. My body didn't know how. My first reaction was disbelief, like she'd texted the wrong person. But there it was, my name at the top. "You'd embarrass me." I stood up too fast, knocking over my coffee. It spread across the table, seeping into a stack of unpaid bills. I grabbed a towel, but my hands were trembling. I wiped in slow, shaky circles, trying to clean, trying to fix something. When I called Mom, she didn't pick up. Straight to voicemail. Her voice chirped, "We're probably at the tailor. Leave a message." I didn't. I called Dad next. He answered on the third ring, his voice low. "Dad, did you know about this?" I asked. There was a pause long enough to make my heart ache. "I don't want to get involved," he finally said. Then he hung up. That silence after the click, that was the sound of a bridge burning. For hours I just sat there. I didn't move, didn't turn on the TV, didn't eat. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of children playing somewhere outside. At sunset, the orange light filled the kitchen, hitting the framed photo on the counter. It was from Isolde's college graduation. I'd driven 8 hours to surprise her, holding a bouquet that wilted before she even hugged me. She'd posted the photo later, cropped me out completely. I hadn't thought about that in years. Until now. The room darkened and I realized I hadn't turned on any lights. My phone buzzed once more. Bryn, my best friend, checking in. "You okay, Ro? You sound off." I typed, "I think I just got uninvited from my own family." Then I deleted it. Typed again, "Just tired, long day." That lie was easier. I took a walk outside as the streetlights flickered on. Goleta was calm that time of evening. Neighbours walking dogs, the faint hum of sprinklers. Normal life happening, like mine hadn't just collapsed inward. When I came back, I stood in front of the mirror. It was an old habit, something I did when I needed to remember who I was. My reflection stared back. 32? Freckles faint under the porch light. hair tied up carelessly. There was nothing remarkable about the woman looking back, but for the first time I didn't recognize her. I whispered, half out loud, half to the woman in the mirror. They erased me. Not just from a list, from belonging. From the story my family wanted to tell the world, one where I was never part of the picture. I laughed then, quietly, the kind of laugh that hurts. I thought of every time I'd stayed late helping Isolde polish a presentation, every secret I'd kept, every favor I'd done because family was supposed to mean something. Now I was just inconvenient. When I finally crawled into bed, I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan turning in slow, lazy circles, each rotation another thought. How long had they been planning this without me? Did they talk about me? Did they laugh? At midnight, I checked my phone again. Still no word from Mom. No apology. Just silence. Outside, the night was heavy, the kind that pressed against the windows. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine Madrid. The music, the champagne, my mother's proud smile, Isolde's perfect dress. And realized, painfully, I wasn't in that picture. I wasn't in any of them anymore. That's when it finally hit me. Not like a punch, but like slow drowning. My family hadn't forgotten me. They'd chosen to move on without me. And in their new world of polished photos and curated lives, there was no room for someone who didn't fit the image. I turned off my phone, rolled onto my side, and whispered into the dark. I wasn't just left out of a wedding, I was erased from my own family. The next morning didn't bring peace. It brought stillness, the kind that sits too heavy, like the house was holding its breath. The sunlight spilled through the blinds, slicing across the clutter I hadn't touched since last night. A half-eaten sandwich, a coffee cup with a dried ring at the bottom. My phone lay face down on the nightstand, like even it didn't want to face what came next. I rose slowly, as if motion itself had weight. The ache behind my eyes hadn't left. Sleep had only offered more questions. I made coffee out of habit, letting the machine gurgle while I stood motionless. The first sip stung, all bitterness and no comfort. That text from Isolde looped in my mind. No explanation, no apology, just erasure. I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered after 2 rings, her voice bright. Morning, sweetheart. That fake warmth. I knew it too well. The kind of voice she reserved for holiday brunches and people she barely liked. Mum, I said carefully. I saw the guest list. I'm not on it. Silence. Then the gentle clink of dishes. She'd put me on speaker, continuing with whatever task took priority over this conversation. Honey, this isn't about you, she said, still cheery. It's Isolde's moment. You know how important this wedding is to her. I know, I said, but I'm still her sister. A pause, then that voice, the one that sliced without raising its volume. You not fitting in isn't her fault. The families attending don't speak English. It would just be awkward. Awkward? My voice was thin. It's not personal, she added, as if that made it easier to swallow. You don't speak Spanish, and it's a very formal event. Isolde doesn't want confusion. Confusion, that's what I was now. Mum, I said, trying to stay calm, you really think my presence would be confusing? You've always been sensitive, she said, brushing past the word like it was lint on a sleeve. This isn't rejection, it's practicality. Practicality. That word again, she'd used it when she sold my dad's piano behind his back. When she'd boxed my things after college and said, it's time you learned to fly. Was this your idea too? My idea? She echoed, mock offended. Sweetheart, I just want what's best for both my girls. You wouldn't enjoy Spain. You'd feel out of place. Better for them, never for me. A voice murmured in the background. My father. She didn't offer to pass the phone. Can I talk to Dad? He's busy. I just want Rowena, she cut in. Let's not make this dramatic. Dramatic. That was her label for anything she didn't want to deal with. You're asking me not to make this about me, I said, when I'm the one being excluded. You always look for something to fight about, she said softly. Sometimes family has to make hard choices. Hard choices, the kind that left someone on the outside. I swallowed hard. So I'm the hard choice. Her silence was the answer. When she hung up, I sat frozen, phone still in hand. My gaze drifted to the window. The garden outside was overgrown. Mum's roses still bloomed wildly along the fence. I used to call her every spring for pruning advice. Now, even looking at them made me feel sick. I called Dad next. It rang longer. He answered on the 4th try. Hey, Ro, he said, voice hushed, tentative. Did you know? I asked. He didn't ask what I meant. Your mother told me it's complicated. It's not complicated. It's cruel. A heavy sigh. I don't want to make things worse. Worse than pretending I don't exist? He hesitated. Rowena, let it go. They've made their decision. Whose side are you on? I'm not choosing sides. I just don't want conflict. And there it was, his favourite excuse. Neutrality. The mask he wore while people bled around him. Doing nothing, I whispered, is taking a side. Silence. Then the call ended. I didn't move. Just stood there, the phone pressed to my ear long after the line had gone dead, listening to absence. The day unravelled in scattered pieces. I tried to write. I opened documents. Typed, deleted, typed again. Nothing held. Words dissolved like sugar in water. Eventually, I opened my laptop out of desperation. I needed something to feel under control. Inbox full, mostly receipts, spam, and old emails. Then I saw one from Isolde 3 months ago. Hey Ro, can you help with something? It's a surprise for Mom and Dad. I promise I'll pay you back soon. Just need a quick transfer for the venue deposit. You're the only one I trust to handle it fast. I remembered that day. I sent the money before lunch. $30,000, no questions asked. Back then, I didn't know the surprise was me being erased. I opened my banking app. There it was. Payment to Event Co., $30,000. No refund, no thank you, just gone. I sat there staring, my hands trembled, but it wasn't rage, it was clarity. Every time they'd said we couldn't have done it without you. They meant it. Literally. I scrolled through messages from Isolde. Years of them, favours, requests, loans, edits, help. Always followed by silence. I typed out a message. You asked me to pay for your wedding, then banned me from it. How do you even justify that? But I didn't send it. I deleted it, letter by letter, until the screen was clean again. It wouldn't change anything. By evening, the light outside had softened into that golden-orange dusk. I shut the laptop, wrapped myself in a blanket, though the room wasn't cold. Mum's voice echoed again. You should understand. Understand what? That love in this family came with invoices? That I was useful but never loved? For a moment, I doubted myself. Was I truly the problem? No, I knew better. I'd believed that lie for too long already. At the window, I watched the couple across the street hang string lights in their backyard. They laughed and moved with ease, a language I used to know. I watched them for a long time, letting the sound of their joy drift over like music from a different world. This wasn't going to destroy me. I'd been invisible before and I had survived. But this wasn't invisibility. It was betrayal, polished, justified, dressed in smiles. Later, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the table again. My finger traced the dried coffee stain, round and permanent. It reminded me of how things stick, how betrayal leaves rings even after the cup is gone. They took my money, I whispered to the room, my dignity, and still had the nerve to tell me it wasn't about me. The house was silent, save for the low hum of the refrigerator. That kind of silence didn't soothe. It pressed in, heavy and unkind. I sat in the kitchen long after the phone call had ended, the words still clinging to the walls like smoke. My hands rested on the table, but my mind refused to rest with them. It spun like an old ceiling fan in summer. Slow, relentless, unyielding, how did it get this far? I rose, switched off the kitchen light, and padded into the living room, each step across the cold wooden floor grounding me back into the now. The digital clock above the television blinked, 12:43 a.m. I wrapped myself in an old fleece blanket, its softness a small mercy, and pulled my laptop onto my lap. The glow of the screen lit my face, but I didn't open my bank account this time. No need to see numbers to measure what's been taken from you. I opened a blank document, the cursor blinking like it was waiting for me to make sense of the betrayal. But words didn't come. Instead, I found myself drifting through folders, digital memory lanes stored out of sight, out of mind. And then I saw it. Isolde, semester abroad. A folder I hadn't touched in years. Curiosity, or maybe something deeper, made me click. Inside were receipts, PayPal confirmations, scanned checks, even an old email thread, me writing to the study abroad office to help. Isolde meet her deadline. There was one document that stood out, a bank transfer. $4,000, dated over a decade ago. The memories came fast and clear. I was 22 in grad school at Berkeley, working 2 jobs just to stay afloat, tutoring English during the day, slinging coffee at a 24-hour diner by night. I'd get home sore, feet blistered, eyes burning. But I was proud. I was doing it on my own. Then, one evening, Mum called. Her voice was bright, chipper. "Your sister got accepted into the Madrid program." "That's great," I'd said, forcing enthusiasm even though I was folding my stained apron and wiping sweat off my neck. "She's thrilled," Mum continued. Then came the pause. I knew that pause. "The thing is, we're just a little short on the deposit. Could you help just this once? We'll pay you back." They never did. Of course they never did. That month I worked every extra shift I could, said no to social invites, skipped meals, lived off ramen and vending machine coffee, and then I wired the $4,000 so Isolde wouldn't miss her chance. She called that night crying. "You didn't have to do this," she said between sobs. "I wanted to," I replied. "You deserve to see the world." "You're the best sister ever," she whispered. Back then, I believed her. Now, alone in my living room, I opened an old photo. Isolde posing in front of Madrid's royal palace, arms wide, her red scarf fluttering. The same scarf I'd mailed for her birthday, the one I'd wrapped in tissue paper with a handwritten note. "So you won't feel alone when you're far from home?" I stared at that photo until my eyes blurred. A chime broke the silence. New message from Bryn. "Hey, Ro, I know it's late, but I think you should hear this before someone else tells you." She'd attached a voice note. My heart skipped. I hesitated, then pressed play. Isolde's voice poured from the speakers. Light, laughing, completely at ease. "She's just not Madrid material," she said. "I mean, she wouldn't even know what fork to use at a formal dinner. I love her, but she's not the kind of presence I want at my wedding." A second voice, someone I didn't recognize, laughed. "Harsh," they said. Isolde replied without missing a beat. "It's the truth. Every family has one." I froze. That last line echoed in my skull. Every family has one. The problem child. The embarrassment, the one you keep in the shadows. I replayed it, slower, just to be sure I wasn't imagining the venom in her tone. "She's just not Madrid material." She said it like it was an unchangeable fact, like I was someone to be pitied, avoided, excluded. And the worst part? It sounded just like Mum, that same cold tone reserved for people she considered beneath her. The pain didn't rush in, it seeped quiet and cruel. I opened another folder, childhood photos. There I was, holding Isolde's hand on her first day of school, me running beside her bicycle as she learned to ride, me proofreading her college essays while she panicked about deadlines. I had always been the helper, the fixer, the background character in her spotlight. And what did I get for it? I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. I remembered nights at Berkeley when Isolde called crying over Spanish homework. I'd stay up with her, whispering translations, giving her confidence, telling her she could do it. She did do it. She flourished. She became the worldly one, the one Mum boasted about, while I was the one who kept the foundation from crumbling beneath her feet. But now I was the one not fit for her wedding. I picked up my phone. "Thanks for sending that," I texted Bryn. "I guess I needed to hear it." She replied right away. "I'm sorry, Ro. I didn't want to hurt you, but I thought you deserved to know." "You did the right thing," I typed, then added, "Funny thing is, I used to think Madrid changed her, but maybe it just revealed who she always was." Bryn didn't reply. She didn't need to. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and caught my reflection in the window. I looked tired, hollow, not broken, but not whole either. I thought about confronting Mum, telling her what I'd heard, demanding an explanation, but I already knew how it would go. She'd turn it back on me. "You misunderstood." "She didn't mean it like that." "You always take things so personally." No, there was no point. So instead I returned to the couch and whispered into the quiet. "You wanted a perfect life, Isolde, and I helped you build it." I stared at her smiling photo one more time. "I gave you that," I said, voice low, "every piece of it." And the bitterness began to bloom. Not rage, not fury, just something deeper, something ancient. The ache of being invisible for too long. I thought of all I'd sacrificed. Money, time, sleep, self-worth. I'd poured into her so she could rise. And now she had the nerve to decide who deserved a seat at her table. I played the voice note one last time. "She's just not Madrid material." I laughed softly, bitter and tired. "You're right," I whispered. "I'm not Madrid material." Then I added more firmly, "I'm something you can't buy, imitate, or forget." The cursor blinked on the empty document. I didn't need to write anything. The truth had finally been said. The room was still wrapped in shadows when I opened my eyes. Morning hadn't fully arrived. It was the kind of grey in-between hour where time felt suspended. I couldn't tell if I had truly slept or if my mind had just floated, weightless, in and out of restless thought. Everything felt heavy, my body, my breath, even the stillness in the air. Not the kind of stillness that brings peace, but the sharp kind. The kind that crackles with something unseen, like the moment before a glass shatters or match strikes. I sat up slowly, my muscles tight from a night folded over grief, disappointment and something new, resolve. In the kitchen I made coffee without thinking. My hands moved from habit. Pour, press, wait, steam curled into the air. The same table greeted me like a reluctant witness, holding on to the memories of every broken moment from the past week. The stain from Tuesday's spill still glared up at me, a dark ring of truth I hadn't tried to erase. It felt earned, like a bruise you stop hiding. I opened my laptop. The black screen blinked before me, briefly reflecting a face I barely recognized. Mine, but steadier. Tired eyes, tight mouth, quiet defiance. When the desktop loaded, I skipped past the new messages and went straight to the sent folder. One subject line pulled me up short. Event co-transfer. Confirmation. I clicked. My stomach tightened. There it was, undeniable. A wire transfer of $30,000 approved and completed. My name signed at the bottom, neat and unquestioning, like I had any idea what I was really funding back then. Not a contribution, a cover-up. I stared at it. Then I got to work. Receipts, screenshots, email threads, calendar invites, everything linked to the wedding, to the money, to my name. One by one, I gathered them, categorized them. I moved like someone possessed, not by anger, but by something colder, sharper, focused. The folder I created on my desktop was labeled What They Forgot. A simple title. No accusations, no venom, just truth. Then I opened a new email to Vera Thompson, wedding planner, CC eventsamaravia.corporate.com. Subject, regarding financial contributions to the Havers de Leon wedding. I didn't need a long message. I attached the files and typed, for transparency purposes, please see the attached records reflecting my financial contributions and deposits made directly to EventCo for this wedding. Rowena Havers. I read it over. No rage, no threats, just facts. My finger hovered over the mouse. I thought, you don't need to scream to be heard. You just have to stop whispering. Click. The email whooshed into the ether, quiet, final. I expected something dramatic. A crash of thunder, a phone call, sirens in the distance, but the world remained steady. The refrigerator hummed, a bird chirped outside, the sky began to brighten behind the blinds, and something inside me settled. Not in triumph, not in glee, but in clarity. I had finally stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. I opened the window. The morning air was laced with ocean salt and eucalyptus, clean and unfamiliar. I inhaled deeply. My chest didn't hurt for once. The clock read 9:12 a.m. I hadn't slept. But I wasn't tired. I didn't tell Bryn. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was hiding, because I didn't need validation this time. Some acts of truth don't require an audience. I powered off my phone and went about the day like it was any other. I watered the plants, replied to one client, ate leftover soup, and beneath it all a tension hummed, like the first tremor before an avalanche. By evening the sun slipped behind the hills. Shadows crept back into the room. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window, notebook in my lap, pen in hand. I wrote, "This isn't revenge, this is reality." Then I underlined it, twice. I was done hiding behind politeness. I wasn't disrupting peace, I was restoring balance. Eventually I dozed off. The next time I opened my eyes, the sky had turned a soft blue. Dawn, a new day, my neck ached from sleeping upright. My hand reached automatically for my phone. The screen exploded with notifications. 23 missed calls. Isolde, Mom, Dad, Vera, Avon. One unknown number, another buzz. Isolde again. I let it ring. Then came the messages. Dozens of them. From Mom, "What did you do? You've embarrassed us all." From Isolde, "Are you insane? You've ruined everything." From Vera, "We need to talk immediately." And from Avon, "You've got no idea what you've started." I read them in silence, one by one, not surprised, not shaken, just steady. I poured another cup of coffee and let my phone keep buzzing in the background, like a distant storm I no longer feared. Because the storm had reached their side now. I returned to the table. The stain was still there, but I wasn't. They would spin the narrative as they always did, craft the script, where I was ungrateful, unstable, unkind. But this time they'd have to do it in the light, with my name on every record, with receipts. I smiled faintly, not out of vengeance, but from knowing I'd finally chosen myself. I silenced the phone, turned it face down again, and opened my laptop. The email was still in the sent folder, marked as read. I closed my eyes for a long moment, then I got up and began my day. Morning came slowly, as if even the sun hesitated to rise on what was left of my family's mess. My phone lay silent on the table, the screen black and still. I'd silenced it the night before, and it had stayed that way ever since. But I knew on the other side of that glass, there were messages waiting, accusations typed in panic, shame disguised as rage. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat down by the window. The ocean wind was faint, carrying the distant sound of gulls. I tried to focus on that, something ordinary, steady, not soaked in betrayal. But curiosity crept in. Against my better judgment, I reached for my phone and unlocked it. The notifications hit me like a wave. Missed calls, voicemails, messages. I scrolled past them until one caught my eye. Wedding memories real. Official. It was a tag notification from the wedding planner's account, Vera's company. For a second, my heart tightened. Maybe, just maybe, it was an olive branch. Maybe someone had realized how far things had gone. I clicked the link. The video opened in full color. Elegant piano music played. A montage of smiles, white dresses, candlelit dinners, the perfect golden light of Madrid's sunset. My sister's laugh filled the audio, bright and performative. And then I saw it. The opening clip, the one I had filmed myself, was there. I remembered crouching behind a fountain at a rehearsal shoot, helping Vera frame the perfect shot of Isolde twirling in her engagement dress. I'd spent hours editing that sequence, fixing the lighting, softening her features so she'd look effortless. Now, watching it, I realized something horrifying. I wasn't there, not once, not even my voice. The credits rolled at the end, my name gone. The caption beneath the video read, "Made possible by the support of family and friends who believe in us." The words blurred for a moment. Who believe in us? That was the kind of phrase my mother loved to use, warm and self-congratulatory, the sound of virtue signaling dressed in lace. I sat back in my chair, feeling that slow, crawling kind of humiliation that doesn't make you cry. It just hardens you. The disrespect wasn't quiet anymore. It was broadcast. They hadn't just erased me in private. They'd done it publicly, with smiles on their faces like it was a branding decision. I refreshed the page again. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. So beautiful. A perfect family. The love here is unreal. Unreal indeed. I closed the app and stared out the window for a moment. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but inside I could feel the pulse in my jaw tightening. This wasn't silence anymore. This was mockery. The next hit came an hour later. I was at my desk answering a client email when my phone buzzed with a new message, this time on WhatsApp. The sender's name made me pause. Aunt Miriam. She was my mother's cousin, the kind of woman who always found a way to insert herself into everyone's business while pretending she was just checking in. I hadn't heard from her in years. The message was short. "Maybe it's better this way, Ro. You always made things about you." Attached was a screenshot, a group text, a family chat I wasn't in. I opened it, my thumb hesitating over the glass. There it was. My mother, my sister, cousins, even relatives I barely knew. Lines of gossip stacked one after another. She's acting out again. She's just jealous. Some people can't be happy for others. Each message hit harder than the last. My chest burned, not from surprise, but from recognition. I'd seen this pattern before. Quiet whispers turning into public narratives, rewritten until the truth was unrecognizable, and they were good at it. My family had always been experts at making cruelty sound like concern. I stared at the message from Aunt Miriam for a long time. "You always made things about you." The irony of it nearly made me laugh. I'd spent my entire life making things about them, about Isolde's dreams, Mum's expectations, Dad's comfort. The air in the room felt heavier now. I stood up, pacing slowly, trying to shake the rising tension in my chest. My hand brushed the shelf above the desk where my journal sat. I took it down, flipped to a blank page, and wrote in big letters across the top, "They want silence. Give them something louder." I didn't mean screaming, I meant truth. I opened my phone again, switched to voice notes, and stared at the blinking red dot. I hesitated for a second, then pressed record. My voice came out steady, clear, colder than I expected. "Erase me all you want. Just know, every time you try to make me smaller, you shrink in their eyes, not mine." I paused, breathing slowly, the weight of years sitting behind those words. Then I added, even quieter, "Do it again and I won't stay quiet." I listened back once. The tone was calm, deliberate. No trembling, no weakness, just truth wrapped in steel. Then I hit send to Isolde. No emojis, no explanation. I set the phone down on the table next to my half-empty coffee cup and waited, not for a reply, just for the quiet to settle again. Outside, the clouds began to roll in from the coast, their shadows crossing the yard like slow-moving waves. The light dimmed. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower buzzed. I thought of all the times I'd let things slide. Every snide comment passed off as a joke. Every favor turned into a debt. Every apology I'd never received but gave anyway. That ended here. I wasn't seeking revenge. I wasn't trying to win. I just wanted something simple, respect, the kind that doesn't need approval to exist. The phone vibrated once. Isolde's name appeared on the screen. I didn't open the message. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The anger had cooled into something sharper. Resolve. Family or not, there comes a point where silence becomes consent. I wasn't consenting anymore. They wanted to make me invisible, but this time I'd made my boundaries visible. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The sky had turned a heavy grey, the colour of unspoken truths finally ready to break. I reached for my journal again and wrote, beneath my earlier line, "The storm's coming, but I'm ready for the rain." Then I put the pen down, closed the cover, and whispered to the empty room, "Do it again and I won't stay quiet." The rain I'd been waiting for came that night, not from the sky but from my inbox. A quiet, steady drizzle of chaos. It started with a message from Leo, an old friend from my writing workshop days. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe a year, but his message was short and sharp, like a match against dry paper. "Ro, did you help write this?" Beneath it, a link, a YouTube video titled "Behind the Wedding, the Story of Isolde and Avon." I almost scrolled past. At first glance, it looked like another overproduced wedding promo. Isolde, always the star of her own movie, parading her curated perfection across a screen. But Leo wouldn't message without reason. My thumb hovered, then tapped. The video began with soft orchestral music, the kind reserved for perfume ads and luxury car commercials. A warm golden filter soaked every frame. Then a voice began narrating. Isolde's voice. "Love," she said slowly, breathily, "isn't about perfection. It's about finding someone who mirrors the best parts of your soul." My stomach dropped. Those were my words. Every syllable, every pause, mine. 3 months earlier, she'd called me late at night, panicked, breathless. "I want the wedding to feel cinematic," she'd said, "like a fairy tale. You're good with words. Can you help me make it sound bigger?" I had stayed up that entire weekend, drafted her story into poetry, poured sincerity into something she wanted to brand. Line after line, I crafted what became the script for her wedding film. I even gave it a title, The Mirror of Love. And now, there it was, lifted without credit, without acknowledgement, a monologue I had shaped with care, paraded as her own brilliance. Not a comma changed, not a single word omitted. As I watched, the scenes shifted, slow motion shots of her and Avon walking hand in hand on a beach at sunset, their silhouettes framed against an impossibly perfect sky. My lines echoed across the screen. Every love story begins with a choice, but only a few end with understanding. Another line, another theft dressed in lace. I watched to the end, the credits rolled. Directed by Avon de Leon, story by Isolde Holvers. My name was nowhere. I closed the laptop with a soft click. My hands trembled, not from heartbreak, but from the quiet fury of betrayal. This wasn't just about plagiarism, it was about dismissal, about how easily she had erased my role, my voice, my worth. I stood and walked to the kitchen, needing something solid, something grounding. The refrigerator buzzed faintly. I caught my reflection in the dark window. My face was calm, too calm, but beneath the stillness was heat, pressure building beneath glass. For the next few hours I cleaned, wiped down the counters, folded towels, rearranged the spice rack, anything to distract from the thrum in my chest. But the images wouldn't leave, her voice saying my words, her face smiling over the life I'd helped script. Just past 3 p.m, the mail arrived. I almost didn't check it. Among the bills and flyers, a small envelope stood out, covered in glittery stickers and drawn-on stars. My name was scrawled in crooked crayon, Aunt Rowena. My heart softened. Inside was a drawing. Bold crayon strokes showed a stick figure in a red cape standing between 2 angry-looking taller women and a small crying figure. At the top, In pink marker, it read, "My hero, Aunt Rowena." My throat tightened. On the back, another message in the same pink. "I love Aunt Rowena because she helps people. I want to help people too. Narina, my niece, my sister's daughter, 5 years old. She didn't know anything about betrayal or manipulation. She didn't know what her mother had done. But she saw me, truly saw me. For the first time all day, I felt something other than fury. I felt anchored. I gently smoothed the drawing, tracing the red cape with my thumb. The lines were uneven, some colours outside the margins, but it was perfect. Narina reminded me of something I'd forgotten. My worth was never up for debate. Not from Isolde, not from anyone. I folded the drawing and pinned it to the fridge, just above an old coffee stain. The red cape faced the room like a shield. The rage inside me settled, not extinguished but refined. No longer fire but steel. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront her at the wedding or expose her with a dramatic call-out. I was going to do something quieter, sharper. As twilight approached, I reopened my laptop. The screen glowed amber in the dimming light. I scrolled through Isolde's feed. Flawless photos, brand deals, magazine interviews. Hashtags, smiles. Isolde and Davin, mirror of love. Her empire was growing on a foundation I helped build. I clicked Add Story. A blank text box opened. I took a deep breath, then typed, "This wedding was built on someone's silence. That silence ends tonight." No hashtags, no mentions, no call-outs, just truth, quietly placed like a single stone in a still pond. I disabled the comments, posted, closed the laptop, turned my phone face down. The house fell into shadow as dusk deepened. I sat there in silence, watching the room grow darker, listening to the stillness. Then softly it came. The first drops of rain, not harsh, not stormy, just gentle taps against the window pane, a cleansing. I got up, poured a glass of water, and returned to Narina's drawing. I held it in my hands again and whispered like a prayer. "Thank you, sweetheart. You reminded me who I am." Then I looked out the window, my voice low but steady, almost like I was speaking to Isolde herself, wherever she was, behind her veil of curated elegance. This wedding was built on someone's silence. That silence ends tonight. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel erased. I felt like I had just begun. The rain that swept through Goleta the night before had left a deceptive stillness. Not peace, tension. It was the silence before a drum beat. The moment before lightning strikes. My apartment smelled of stale coffee, salt air, and something else. Electric. Sprinkler clicked faintly outside. Inside, the world was still. 5 days before the wedding. 5 days before my sister would walk down an aisle, paid for with my money, under an arch inspired by my ideas, wearing a dress chosen from a board I created, while my name was scrubbed from every credit. But I wouldn't be erased so easily. I hadn't slept much, not out of fear, but clarity. I had written through the night, not out of rage, but resolve. Every word deliberate, every screenshot labelled. This wasn't a meltdown. It was a mirror. The cursor on my laptop blinked like a heartbeat in the dark. I sipped cold coffee and read from the script I had written with trembling steadiness. I funded this wedding. I wrote the story you're watching, and I was erased, not because I didn't belong, but because I made someone uncomfortable. I pressed record. The red light of my webcam came on. I stared at my reflection, tired, pale, unfiltered, but not a ghost, not anymore. I'm Rowena Havers. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Maybe you're attending the wedding this weekend. Maybe you've seen the highlights online. Either way, you deserve to know what kind of story you're celebrating. What followed wasn't anger. It was a timeline. I layered in visuals, emails from Isolde, the design files, bank transfers, my original script labelled The Mirror of Love, evidence, not accusation. I believed I was helping my family create something beautiful. I believed I had a seat at the table. My voice only cracked once when I showed a photo, me and Isolde years ago, arms around each other, real laughter. A moment I once believed was permanent. When I was told not to come, I started to doubt myself. But I've realized something. Silence is not always grace. Sometimes silence is complicity. The last line. You're attending something built on exclusion and lies. 6 minutes and 17 seconds. No music, no edits, just truth. I uploaded the video unlisted. Then I drafted one email. Subject, before you attend the wedding. To everyone on the guest list. I hovered over send. Then I clicked. The air changed. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt charged, like the sky before thunder. 20 minutes later, Vera, the wedding planner, emailed, "Rowena, what is this? Call me immediately." Then a text from an unknown number. "You think this will make people like you? You've always been jealous." No name, didn't need one. By noon, the wave began. The video had been shared, then reshared, then posted on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Sit-in, justice for Rowena, truth before vows, family facade. I heard from people I hadn't spoken to in years. "Ro, I saw your video. That was brave. You're trending. Everyone's talking. I can't believe Isolde did that." Then came the sponsors. The brands that once flaunted their logos beside the couple's name quietly withdrew, one by one, due to revelations regarding the wedding's creative origins and financial integrity. "We are ending our partnership." Then another. "We cannot support events built on exclusion." Then the press picked it up. "Sister of bride goes viral. Wedding deception exposed in emotional video." Suddenly, it wasn't just my story. It was a voice for every person who had been erased, overlooked, or made to feel invisible in their own family. My inbox flooded. "Thank you for standing up. I was always the forgotten one too. You gave me courage." Meanwhile, Isolde responded. A carefully filtered Instagram post, captioned, "Families are complicated. I wish my sister healing." A picture-perfect performance. Her comment section caught fire. "You stole from her. This is what fake looks like. Healing, try apologizing." She turned off comments, then deleted the post. Avon, her fiancé, stayed silent. But that silence said more than any PR statement could. Later that day, Vera released a shaky video from her car. "We were misled. We regret our involvement. We're reviewing our role in this event." One by one, the names once orbiting Isolde like planets fell away. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry. I felt steady. For years, I believed justice had to be loud, a courtroom, a confrontation. But that day I learned, sometimes justice whispers, sometimes it doesn't roar. It just stands there, quiet, unshaken, while the lies collapse. As the sun set over Goleta, casting gold across the windows, I stood by the glass. Kids laughed outside. Sprinklers hissed to life again. The world moved on, then one last message buzzed on my phone. From Mom. "You've humiliated us. Are you happy now?" I typed a reply. For the first time, yes. But I didn't send it. I deleted it. Some truths don't need to be said. They just need to exist. I turned toward the fridge where Narina's crayon drawing still hung, a stick figure in a red cape beneath a rainbow. I finally understood. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need recognition. What I needed was peace, and in that silence after the storm, I finally found it. The sunlight wasn't warm. It was sharp, bladed. It didn't ease me into morning. It cut through it. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the glare bleeding through the blinds. Every sound felt amplified. The ticking of the clock, the hum of traffic below, even the faint buzz of my phone. I didn't want to check it, but I did. 8 missed calls. Celine, Vera, Mum, all names I hadn't said aloud in weeks, months even. I let the screen go dark again. My body felt like it had been stitched together hastily, full of places where rest had failed to mend. The weight behind my eyes, the dryness in my mouth, the tightness across my shoulders, it all whispered the same thing. Not yet, not ready. But the time for delay was over. By mid-morning, I was already pulling into a hospital parking lot in Santa Barbara. I wasn't technically allowed to park in the handicapped space, but I did it anyway. Rules seemed trivial now. Morality had shifted. My moral compass no longer spun on other people's expectations. I reached for my bag, my fingers brushing the edge of the envelope inside. Narina's drawing peeked out from the top. A house with bright windows, a girl in a red coat, a tree with purple leaves. It wasn't just crayon, it was anchor. It was why I was here. Hospitals have a scent, not the clean kind, more like overcompensation. Bleach fighting ghosts, coffee burnt into bitterness. I passed empty vending machines, flickering overhead lights, nurses who looked past me like I was another name on another list. Room 213. My feet paused outside the door. I looked down the corridor, back toward the way I came, then forward again. I pushed it open. Inside, the world dimmed. The fluorescent lights still hummed, but everything felt muted. My father lay in the bed like a painting left out in the rain. Colours faded, edges softened. A nasal cannula hissed with oxygen. The monitor beside him beeped steadily, a cruel reminder that life sometimes lingers even when presence has long since gone. Celine was there, curled in the visitor's chair, her hair pulled back, a cardigan wrapped around her shoulders. Her face was raw, not from crying, but from not crying. She looked up when I stepped in, her eyes widened. "Rowena," she whispered, "I didn't think—" "Don't," I said, holding up a hand, not out of anger, out of exhaustion. She stood instinctively, then sat again when I didn't move closer. "I came as soon as I heard," she offered, like it was an olive branch, but the tree it came from was long dead. "I'm not here to rehash the past," I said quietly. "But let's not pretend you didn't help erase me from it." I didn't look at her after that. I turned to him. The man in the bed was not the father I remembered, but somewhere beneath the papery skin and hospital linens, fragments of him remained. I reached into my bag and pulled out Narina's drawing. I placed it gently on the bedside table. He wouldn't recognize it. Maybe he wouldn't even wake. But it was a marker, a moment, a line drawn in soft crayon across sharp memories. I touched his hand. It was colder than I expected. Fragile, as though the bones had turned to glass beneath the skin. And then came the memory. Not the bad ones, not the ones that had left wounds, but the time he taught me how to skip stones. His voice echoing across the creek. "It's not about strength, it's about timing." Or the nights he read to us from books with torn pages, inventing voices for each character. Before silence replaced storytelling. Before loyalty became conditional. "I'm here, Dad," I whispered, barely audible. No response, no twitch, no recognition. But I stayed there, fingers resting over his, the weight of years pressing down like fog. Celine said nothing. Mum didn't even look at me. She stared out the window, her hands clasped in her lap. The same hands that once braided my hair, the same hands that had dialed my number only to say, "You always need everything explained." Well, this time I didn't. "I'm doing what's right," I said softly, standing, "not what's easy." She flinched just a little, a wrinkle in her mask. I turned and walked out, didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, didn't offer forgiveness wrapped in a bow. Some things deserve closure, others deserve distance. Hours later, the sky cracked open and rain began to fall. Soft, slow, not the dramatic kind, the kind that feels like a long exhale after a storm. I was in a taxi headed for Madrid. The screen inside the cab blinked with news. Harvard's de Leon wedding, social media explodes after viral family confession. The headlines scrolled like a parade of irony. I leaned my head against the glass, watching water streak across the window. The skyline blurred into watercolor. My reflection flickered back at me, older, quieter, but not broken. At the venue, security nodded when I gave my name. Apparently, someone had finally added me to the guest list. A little late for inclusion, but still. Inside, the hall was beautiful. Of course it was. I had helped design it. Oversaw the color palette, consulted on the floral placement, recommended candlelight instead of chandeliers. Everything was elegant. But it was empty. No music, no laughter. Just chairs waiting for people who no longer knew what to say. A stage had been prepared. A mic waited at its center. Someone, I never saw their face, handed it to me, as if this was my cue. I stood there. Everyone who remained turned toward me. Expectation wrapped the room like fog. I took the mic and I put it down. Then I walked out. No speech, no scream, no performance. Sometimes silence is the loudest protest. Outside, petals from the centerpieces had begun to scatter in the wind. They danced along the pavement, pale and soft, like apologies carried too late. I paused at the doorway. The great glass doors behind me were still ajar. The world ahead of me wide open. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I had finally broken the chain, and that was enough. The morning light was soft but insistent, painting long streaks of gold across the hardwood floor of my living room. I didn't wake to an alarm or a dream. I woke to clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of proving myself to anyone. The knot that had lived in my chest for so long had unraveled quietly sometime in the night. All that remained was a stillness, a purpose. Today was the day I'd been building toward, brick by quiet brick, year by hidden year. I got dressed without ceremony, but not without meaning. A soft white blouse, denim jeans, no designer tags, no borrowed power, just me. In the inner pocket of my jacket, I carefully tucked away the one artifact that had grounded me through the storms. Narina's crayon drawing, childish and beautiful, titled in her own handwriting, "My Hero, Aunt Rowena." The drive through Goleta was peaceful. No music, no rehearsing a speech in my head, just the rustling of amber leaves skating along the sidewalks and the sound of tires humming gently over familiar roads. The community centre stood quiet as I approached, like a held breath before an exhale. Months ago, I had reserved it without knowing if the foundation would even get off the ground. Back then, I was still raw, still bleeding from betrayals I couldn't speak of publicly. But I had known one thing: I wanted to build something that would last longer than anger. By mid-morning, the parking lot began to fill. Inside, volunteers bustled about, hanging teal and white banners, arranging folding chairs in symmetrical rows, adjusting microphones and placing platters of muffins and fruit on the refreshment table. Above the simple wooden stage, a white floral arch framed a bold teal sign that read, "Opening Day, the Rowena Foundation, Scholarships for the Forgotten." There was no red carpet, no local celebrity or influencer, just neighbours, teachers, nurses, retired postal workers, and single mothers. A few reporters milled quietly in the back, snapping photos and scribbling notes. I stood at the edge of it all, unnoticed at first. A woman in the crowd touched my elbow. It was my old elementary school librarian, Mrs. Harrow, now in her 70s. "You always loved the quiet books," she smiled. "The ones that didn't get checked out often, I remember." That nearly undid me, and yet I found myself smiling back, steadier than I'd expected. I guess I was preparing to become one. At noon, the hush fell. It was time. I stepped onto the stage with my heart thudding, not out of fear, but out of awe. This wasn't just a moment for me. It was a moment for every young person who had ever sat in the back, unnoticed, every niece who was never invited, every child who watched a sibling be praised for merely arriving, while they had to climb mountains just to be acknowledged. "Thank you all for being here," I began, the microphone softening the edge of my voice. "Today isn't about me, it's about anyone who has ever been told, by family, by systems, by silence, that they weren't enough." I paused. I saw faces leaning in. Not all of them knew my story, but some had read the articles, followed the legal battles, heard the rumours whispered across dinner tables. I decided then to tell the truth, not as an exposé, but as an offering. I spoke of my sister's wedding in Madrid, how I'd been uninvited because I didn't speak Spanish well enough, how my parents agreed that my absence was best for appearances, how I had contributed financially for years, only to be erased from every milestone and photo. I showed receipts, literal ones, and I showed them the drawing. The room didn't gasp. It listened deeply, respectfully. And then I said what had taken me years to believe. I built this foundation not as a rebuke to those who forgot me, but as a bridge for those who are still being forgotten. Forgiveness doesn't always require reconciliation. Sometimes you have to heal without hearing "I'm sorry." And sometimes dignity looks like walking forward, even if no one's clapping. The applause that followed was quiet, almost reverent, like a church hymn sung softly. As the ceremony transitioned into the community gathering, I found myself surrounded by strangers who didn't feel strange. A teenage girl in a plaid skirt asked about applying for next year's scholarship. A young man who'd been homeless thanked me for creating a space that doesn't pity, but empowers. I was pouring coffee when I felt a small tug at my side. It was Narina. She was wearing her best dress, lavender with daisies. Her smile could melt stone. In her tiny hands, she held a framed version of the drawing I had carried with me. "I wanted you to have this," she whispered. "For real." I knelt down, took it gently, and hugged her tight. "You made today possible," I said. "You reminded me that I didn't disappear, I just hadn't arrived yet." Then I walked her to the front and placed the frame gently on the stage next to the podium. A small anchor in a sea of meaning. As I prepared to deliver the closing remarks, I scanned the room one last time. That's when I saw her. Down the last row, half shielded by a pillar, sat my mother. She wasn't dressed for warmth. She was dressed for hiding. A heavy wool coat wrapped tightly around her like armour. In her hands was a folded ivory envelope, sealed, slightly worn at the edges, the wedding invitation, the one she never mailed. Her eyes met mine, not pleading, not apologising, just present. She didn't stand, I didn't wave. There would be no scene, only this moment. I stepped back to the mic. "Some people will never say they're sorry," I said, voice steady. "That doesn't mean you can't forgive them or move forward or build something bigger than the pain they caused." The final applause was a quiet ocean. No shouts, just understanding. When I exited the hall, Narina was beside me, our fingers laced, the wind scattered petals from the arch behind us tumbling gently across the floor like confessions too late to be spoken. Outside, the sky was clear, the sun was unafraid. Camera shutters clicked, but I didn't flinch. Later, someone at the reception table asked gently, "Do you think you'll ever reconcile with your mother?" I smiled, not bitterly, not triumphantly, just truthfully. I'm already reconciling with myself, and that was the beginning of everything that mattered. Some names vanish from invitations, but become engraved in legacy. Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, they come from those who once called you family. But healing doesn't always mean reunion. It can mean choosing peace over pride, purpose over pain, and walking away with your head held high. Have you ever had to let go of someone you loved for your own sanity? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. We've only just begun.